Welcome to Mentor. I'm Marco Bertozzi.
And I'm Rachel Ford.
We are founders of TheZoo.London, the consultant collective and executive search business. And our podcast is all about sharing world-class wisdom from those who have been there and done it and are here to guide you.
And today we do have a goodie coming up, guiding us, Kathleen Saxton. She's a leader whose career includes being a psychotherapist, a coach, corporate advisor. And she's had over 30 years in media and advertising. Amazing career. But what struck me about this conversation was the first one actually really, in fact, this is probably the most advice and mentorship that we've had, really. She really struck to the script, so thank you, Kathleen. She talked about her mentors being the board you can't afford. So go as senior as you can and just go out with them for a pizza and a glass of wine.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time, she's clearly very driven and very action orientated. I liked her phrase, don't be a passenger. And what she meant by that was around don't take things into your own hands. Don't wait for things to happen to you. If you really want something, you've got to go after it.
Yeah. And for those budding entrepreneurs out there, and I know it's not an original phrase, but her magpie moment was stealing with pride the phrase, so there's a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? So we like it's a juice worth the squeeze, but I like this one as well.
I've actually lived that with a little company I set up where there was 100% a gap in the market, but there wasn't a market in the gap.
Fortunately,
I'll
not
tell you about that
TheZoo.London.
offline.
Yeah, well, fortunately, not TheZoo.London. So you choose your partners wisely as well.
Correct.
Hey, Marco, when you think of a great mentor, what words come to your mind?
I think smart, definitely supportive. Obviously wise and experienced for sure.
Yeah, I think the same really. And, someone knowledgeable who pushes your ideas beyond your first ideas.
That's why we chose Viral Tribe, because they've helped us on our podcasting journey.
Yeah, you could say they've been our podcasting mentors, couldn't you?
They
have been our ultimate support system, helping us with creative ideas, production. And with state-of-the-art studios like we're in today in the heart of Soho, London, they're not just brilliant at what they do, but they make the whole process seamless and stress-free.
And they work with some of the biggest creators, producers and brands, making everything from chart-topping shows to branded entertainment.
So if you're thinking about launching a video, an audio, a live podcast, make Viral Tribe your podcasting mentor.
Drop them a line at hello@viraltribe.co.uk. And if you quote mentor, they'll give you 20% off your first 3 bookings.
So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Let's get Kathleen in for this brilliant session.
Well, today we've got Kathleen Saxton, who, for anyone who's been at an event with Kathleen will know she's always the most in-demand person. So to get to sit down for 45 minutes, an hour is great. So thank you for coming. So Kathleen, I think your career we'd describe as just brilliant because of its variety, its success, and, the variety is incredible. Most recently, you are a fully qualified psychotherapist, coach and mediator. Easy for me to say. But Kathleen has had 30 years of experience within media, advertising industry, held senior leadership roles in media owners like Sky and Global Radio, as well as agencies, PhD, Saatchi & which I think is where we met.
Yeah.
And most recently, Global CMO at Omnicom Media Group, most recently in terms of agency jobs. Kathleen also, in between all of that, founded the most successful what you describe as, which I quite like, talent agency for C-suite headhunting firm called The Lighthouse Company, which eventually transitioned into MediaLink, sort of strategic advisory. So we don't spend too much time on that, but that was a huge success in your career, and many people engaged with you through that. Now, Kathleen runs Psych Ventures, working with individuals and organisations on leadership, resilience and mental health. In her spare time, she is a trustee of the NSPCC, active fundraiser for Childline. We're only going to have a few of these things, I think. I'm sure there's many others. A columnist for Stylist, and a future author of a couple of books coming up, which we're going to, first of all, we're going to ask you a little bit about them, but also we will put the links to your books as they become available into the podcast description. So make sure to check there. But the one that is coming out soon is focused on discovery and recovery from narcissistic abuse. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people waiting to hear about that. Kathleen, I think it's fair to say you bring what is quite a rare combination of business acumen and combined with psychological insight, and we can't wait to hear all about it.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. It's quite exhausting listening
know,
to all of
it's
that.
I
isn't
know
it?
it's
That is
painful. You
somehow-
don't know what to do, do you?
I know.
You
That's
nod, smile.
Yeah, you just have to sit there and yes, that is me. And yeah, really, we're really thrilled to have you here today. We are quite in our cosy, as Alex Jones calls it, Welsh caravan. I am so glad you're wearing white.
I didn't want to let anybody
Well, this
down.
is it. When you walk, so if you're listening or you watch on video, you can see white. And I when I opened my wardrobe this morning, I saw my white dress. I was like, I'm going to channel my inner Kathleen. I'm so pleased then when you were wearing white, because you are a vision. You always are, as Marco says, the most demanding person in the room. But can we please just set the scene to those who may not know you as well, in terms, and we do it every week. We ask for your career in 60 seconds, and you will get extra points for succinctness, because not everyone has managed to do it. But I'm going to give you the challenge, Kathleen.
I think
you
I
can
might
do
be
it.
able to do
I
this.
think you can.
Okay. I wanted to be a dentist, and I started instead as a secretary in a computer firm and ended up as a CEO of my own business.
Wow.
That's it.
Well,
That is it.
I mean, we do like short.
Yeah,
No.
I mean that.
My favourite film is Working Girl.
Right.
And I think I watched that film, that and probably The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox, where he starts in the post room and becomes the CEO. I honestly think it's coloured my life, those two films from
Well,
the 80s.
Was it Melanie Griffiths?
Melanie Griffiths, yeah.
Griffiths,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
There's something about having, if you come from nothing, which I genuinely do, to have this sort of cheek, mischief and a bit of audacity to have a crack at getting right to the top. It was always my plan that I wanted to push it as far as I could possibly go. And I think I have. And if someone says to me it's not possible to do something, I start thinking about how I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
So you mentioned even PhD, which was a glorious time in my career, and then you've mentioned Saatchi. I remember the headhunters at the time, and again, you'll all relate to this, telling me that you couldn't move from the media agency side to the creative agency side at a senior level. You'd have to kind of go back down and back up again. And I thought,
Why?
thanks to that. Yeah. So I managed to find some people that were persuading. So in lots of the things, it's been, I like a challenge. I like a beginning, a middle and an end. So even when, for example, I thought about training as a psychotherapist and I was running Lighthouse, I had 2 children, etc., etc. But my view was, well, there's a beginning and a middle and an end to that training, and I can focus on it and I can schedule it. I can get it done.
Yeah, but you know what I can hear though? Like true determination, grit, hard work.
Yeah.
Because you can't have got where you've got today without that kind of determination. And just as you say, if somebody sets you a challenge, you're like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And do you think that's a drive inside you that you just constantly?
It's an absolute drive. And I think it's not necessarily, it comes from good and difficult places. I think as a child, I had to survive. There's a survival financially, certainly as a child. I was literally homeless at 11. So understanding the value of money, having a Saturday job since the minute I can remember, and really valuing how to take care of myself financially. And I've never been married. I've never had a rich boyfriend. I've never been gifted any money or left any money in someone's will. I have literally financially taken care of myself my whole life. And I'm, to some degree, glad about that now. I've got girlfriends that are struggling with divorces and various things. So I think I had to find a way to get ahead. If I wanted to have nice things or a roof over my head, I had to find a way to provide it. So there was definitely, that would be maybe a negative, but it is a drive. The other is mischievous. I'm a very mischievous person. And so I kind of think, well, why not? There's that classic saying, if not me, then who? You know, I'm like, well, why couldn't I? Why shouldn't I at least try to do it?
It's interesting. I mean, one of the things is, it's like I've always felt that you've sort of thought big about something. You know, you've not done it half-heartedly. You've always thought, well, I could have 20 people here, or I could invite the whole industry. You know, that kind of. Yeah. And it's interesting. One of the things we asked Sir Martin Sorrell when he was on, and we said to him, you could have started an agency, back then,
Yeah.
but really what you started was a global holding company.
Yes.
And it's that like...
Yes. And I think when we started Lighthouse, for example, and again, you'll know this, there are many headhunting firms, recruiting firms, consulting firms in the talent space. And so therefore, I remember Fru Hazlitt, who's actually one of my mentors, I'm sure we'll come on to, said to me, "Oh my God, darling, there's no need for another one." She said to me, "What are you doing?" But I said to her, but I know, being on the other side of the fence, the frustrations of both clients and individuals in representation. And so rather than we're setting up a talent firm, I think at the time our audacious plan was we wanted to change the reputation of headhunting. That was one of our goals, because so many people said headhunters are parasites, they make money out of other people, they take money and never place anybody any good. There was all of these horrid stories about people's negative experiences, both as a candidate or as a client. And I thought, it doesn't have to be that way. We could do something better and bigger than that.
There's a complete parallel, isn't there? In fact, you were one of the first people that I spoke to when we were getting this going. Yeah. And there's a big parallel. We were the same with the consulting, and we took a lot of inspiration from you in that we wanted to create a brand, we wanted to be visible, we wanted to change the conversation around consulting from this sort of thing you did when you weren't working to celebrating it a little bit more, etc. So it's interesting hearing about that. But so you started as secretary, but what was the route in from there onwards?
So I started as a secretary at a business called Hoskins, which was on Shaftesbury Avenue, where the fire station still is, next to the Limelight nightclub as it was. And so I was meant to go to dental school. I wanted to go to dental school. Various things at home were happening where it wasn't going to happen. So I decided to switch and try to go for the BA in advertising at Bournemouth. And the year I was meant to go, they deferred the course for a year. There was issues for some reason. And so I had a year to go to work. So I just literally looked in the Evening Standard, as it was in those days, and found a sort of secretarial role in this company and thought, well, I'll just do that for a year. Maybe I can live with my mates in London that are at a London university. I think my first rent was £181 a month to live in my room, my box room in Finchley Central. And so I started there, but I was very clear that I wanted to try and find a way to, having got a job in London, to move into the advertising side. So I kept looking out for roles in the advertising world in some form that I could go to. And that's where I started. But actually the person I went to from there was actually Theo Paphitis, the dragon.
Oh, was it?
So he was my first proper boss when I was 19. And we are still friends to this day. Our first year of Advertising Week Europe, he came and spoke for us. He always makes time for me. Talking of mentors, which is this show's about, Theo was probably one of the first professional mentors I've ever had, and I still hold that friendship very, very dear. I mean, he really taught me a thing or two about negotiation, you can imagine. So even listening to him on the phone when I was, secretarially doing my typing for him. And again, interestingly, when I was at school, you did cooking or typing if you weren't very bright. You weren't allowed to do it if you're in the sort of top set of something. So I couldn't even type when I started as a secretary. I literally was 2 fingers. So I couldn't even do that very well, but they took me on. So I worked for Theo. So Theo was my breaking point. He ran a business at the time called Movie and Media Sports. Had nothing to do with movies or media, but it sold the perimeter boards at rugby grounds, football grounds, but the old ones, the kind of wooden ones that you painted. So he'd won the contract for things like Cardiff Arms Park or whatever. And that was the business at the time, although he obviously went on and did all sorts of things with Essenza and, Ryman's and everything else. So I worked with him for about a year or so, and he knew that I wanted to really get into advertising still. And then a job came up at a business that doesn't exist anymore called Screen Sport that became Eurosport.
Right.
So I went there, and that's where I started, and then on to Sky.
You're one of the few people we've had on podcasts who's actually aimed to get into advertising.
Yeah, no, I know. People always say it was an accident. No, I really, really wanted to. And I think it was based on, there was a BBC show, I can't remember what it was called, when I was probably 16, 17, that was about careers. And they did one week that was about being an account exec in a creative agency and them carrying on those big bags that had all the ads in. And me
going
thinking,
to pitch.
if I can't be a dentist, then I'll have a bit of that. I'll do that.
And I think it is awareness, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people in those days weren't as aware. And I still think we don't do a good enough job of representing a career in advertising to attract as many people from lots of different backgrounds. But that's a different show. But so you touched on mentors then, and I suppose where I was thinking from I'm not surprised you've had many because that's how you grow. But I was thinking from your unique position within, especially I suppose through the headhunting and Media Link, you know what good looks like, and you've worked with lots of different leaders. Would you say to be a great leader, you also need to be a great mentor? Is that part of being a leader, or do you think some people are just a natural at it and it's great they've got it, or actually
it's a
nice to have, or is it intrinsic in being a great leader, also being a mentor?
I feel two things about that. I feel that we have a duty of care as leaders to do that. Other people did it for us and maybe still do it for us. I still always have mentors around me. So I feel that we have a duty of care to do that. But I think it's harder than people think. Because mentoring is not telling people what to do, which can be some people's default. It's not making the decision for them. I think Nick Halswell taught me by showing me, he's an incredible mentor, because he always says he never writes anything down. So if you go and meet him he says a pizza and a nice glass of wine, that's his deal. If you do that, and obviously he became my chairman in the end, but early on, you turn up, you have your 90 minutes with him over a pizza and a glass of wine, and you tell him what's wrong or what the trouble is or what you're battling with or what you're trying to make sense of, etc. And he'll mull it over with you, he'll play around with it for you, and then he'll, sit with you and decide what you might want to do or not want to do. And that's it. He never writes anything down. There's no follow-up. That's his rule as a mentor. And I quite like that. So he's still interested. The next time you see him, he'll say what happened. Yeah. But he doesn't take it on as something that you're asking him to do work on. And I think some people shy away from being a mentor because they worry it's going to become a lot of work and you're going to get tied down having to do lots of things.
Well, it's because people think you've got to, as you say, you've got to have the answers to everything, haven't you?
And sometimes it's helping people hear their own voice and work it out with them, or put some great questions in that make them really stop and think, what am I trying to do with this, whatever it is, ambition or challenge or problem. So I think we have a duty of care, but I'm not sure that everybody's good at it.
Yeah, and I'd say that like when you describe that experience, also as a mentee, you feel very confident that you can discuss anything. Because if nothing's been written down, it's a bit like, look, this is our safe space, whatever you want to talk about. And as you say, the answer's very often within yourself. Yeah. It needs to be teased out, doesn't it?
It does.
And so you mentioned Through and Theo. Is there anyone else that through your career that...
There's so many. So I think I've always tried to find somebody in every business I've worked in. So, I worked with the magnificent Mark Chippendale at Sky, and he was glorious with me. And Susan McAteer, I often mention, who was the only female group head at Sky when I was there. So she was a brilliant example for me that you absolutely can go there. Even at the time, it was quite a male dominant space, but she absolutely bossed it, and she was amazing. She gave me lots of hits for that. But along the way, I've also actively sought out people that I've either seen speak at something, or I was in a meeting with and thought, I feel you're really impressive. The thing that I always pursue are people that are going to be brutally honest with me. I feel much safer with someone if they're really blunt with me. If someone's a bit too nice or a bit too... For me, I know a lot of people, as you two do. I've got lots of friends and acquaintances. But if you're really in my tight bubble, I need to trust you with everything. And so when I feel or see them being very brutally honest with people, it gives me a sense that they're going to be straight with me. Yeah. So Jerry Bullman would be a really good example of that. He might not even see himself as a mentor for me, but we will meet for lunch intermittently. When I was looking at moving to America, I wanted his honest opinion as a global leader about what I should or shouldn't do as a Brit trying to go to America, things like that. When I was looking at, what I was going to do with Michael Kassan, for example, Michael and I had known each other for a very long time, but we hadn't worked together. And I'm an entrepreneur. He's an incredible entrepreneur. Sometimes that can go wrong. It didn't. He was amazing with me, but I wanted to go and ask some other people. So I remember going to ask... people in the States that knew him very well. So I remember asking Monardo a bit about him. I remember asking even David Pempsell. Like, I'd go to people that had been on the front line that could tell me what it was really like to work with people. So I check everybody out. And so they're really good people. But I've got other people in different functions. So, my employment lawyer, Gilla Harris, Bobby and Susan, my accountants, like people that are right in there with me. I make sure that we're very tight so that on good days, and they can celebrate the great days with me, and they can absolutely be there on the tough days with me. Yeah. But they're on the mission with me, and I'm on their mission with them.
God, this is like a masterclass.
Well, I was going to
say, this is like, if just everybody write this down, because this is all like, this is just gold.
I'm sure you've heard this before, but I call it the board you can't afford. You've got to have the board you can't afford. You could never afford to have all these people as a non-exec director. They would break the bank.
Yeah.
But they might give you 90 minutes or an hour every now and again if you buy them a pizza and a glass of wine.
Yeah,
and
that's a good trade.
That's what's so valuable about mentorship, is that an hour of someone's time could completely change your direction, your life, whatever. Yeah. And it may not, but it also can. And I think that's something, even just listening to you talk, like, and maybe to ask the very specific question, just to build on Rachel's, is so knowing what you know about how, because mentorship to some people, they think is, we're going to meet every couple of weeks, you're going to go through your things, I'm going to go through my, and we'll do that, and then at the end of it, maybe we've got to, and I think to me that was never mentorship to me. It was much more fluid than that. If you're advising people coming into the industry or early on in their careers, or even sort of more senior, how to think about mentorship, what would you say?
I would say go as senior as you dare. You'll be surprised that the most senior people love to be asked their opinion. Make it completely unonerous for them. Make it so that they might only meet you once or twice. And when you do get that time, respect it. So come with your questions. Be absolutely clear what you want to get out of that session. Yeah. So make use of their time. What I struggle with is when people have organised mentorships in companies where you're being mentored by someone in another department. Can you really bring the confidential question you really want to ask? Including, I might want to leave this organisation, or I hate my boss. Yeah. So there's something about that. The senior people, I find sometimes the middle management won't make time for you, but the very senior CEOs, if you go to them directly, and the thing that always frustrates me is, why do people go circuitously to get to these people? Have the confidence to find their, I mean, we can find anybody's email on this now. We're all professional stalkers. You can find anybody if you do want to. And ask them directly and say, I expect the answer might be no, but I just want to ask. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes to you.
Yeah. I like that, go as soon as you can. It's interesting. This is, well, it can be a plug for Wackle. I can unashamedly talk about women in advertising, communications, leadership. But when we do the mentor program, and so Wackle has put forward 4 hours, and then you get placed with somebody else. I always ask, okay, so who else you've been placed with? Just so I can try and also, okay, well, you might want to talk to me about this. You can talk to me about this, just to make sure that those 4 hours are quite different, as you say, like your non-exec board. But when they say, oh, yeah, I've got Silk Snowball, I've got, like, it's going, the access to some incredibly senior women through that Wackle mentorship scheme is really good. And
it's
I
really
think,
good.
and as you say, as the mentor, you get a lot out of it, and you've got no agenda. You can give very honest advice. You don't, and I always do. I do walk and a talk. Yeah. So I said, look, let's, we've got an hour. Let's do it in this way. And I feel the conversation flows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better when you're not staring at somebody. You kind of walking side by side. Yeah.
So Kathleen, going back to your career, you I think it is potentially unique, or not so many people have done the kind of steps you've done, whether it be media agency, creative agencies, you mentioned, media owners, setting your own successful company up and so on. What have you, like, when you've going back to the start and going through those steps and stages, what lessons did you take from each of those moments in your career that you took forward? And, were there any sort of, I don't know, any hacks or anything that came along with that you just sort of, you learnt as you went?
Yeah, I think observing other people is one of the greatest things you can do. And that Michael Casson always says this, which is get in the room. If you're in the right room, then you can learn a huge amount, even if you are the one that's pouring the water and putting the pencils out. But get into the room, particularly if you're coming up through the ranks at the more junior level. Be in the critical negotiations as you're coming out more senior. Get in those pitches if you're on the agency side. All of these things are often extra work, extracurricular, and everyone's working really hard. But there's something about being in the rooms where you will get to observe the stuff that maybe others won't. And I think that gives you the edge. So there's something about that. I would always say to people, and I learnt early on, if you're going to be in a meeting, what's your role? And if you're even going to go and listen to, I don't know, something at Adweek or whatever, what's the question you're going to ask? You want to go and see this panel. Yeah. What's the question you're going to ask? Yeah. Be in the room and allow yourself to be known, and be brave enough to ask the question that you really want answered. Yeah. I think many people go to these things as passengers, and that's fine. We're introvert, extrovert, etc. But actually, be very sure about the role you're going to play.
And do you think that's about visibility as well? I
think visibility, people can see it as superficial. Never mind, let's, talk about narcissism later. People worry about these things. But actually, we remember people, we remember things. And I think that's what's important is, are people going to remember you? Are they going to come back to you? Are they going to rely on you? Are they going to trust you in the career, whatever role you're playing for them? You could be client, you could be someone that might hire them later down the line. How are they going to remember you if you don't give them anything? Someone said to me once, you'll think about this like Velcro. Now, Velcro, both sides have got something to stick to. If it's too smooth and nondescript, there's nothing to have a cohesive something. And I think human connection is the answer to everything. So make sure you connect somehow in the rooms that you're in.
Yeah, I like that.
And isn't there, and I know you did it, and like we all say about new business and agencies, is always put your hand up for that. Yes, because if you're more junior, that's how you get in the room with the CEO or with
that's right.
How you see.
That's a good, without, you may not have one that springs to mind, but when you think about your career, are there any moments where you think you did that? Like you can think of a moment when you pushed yourself?
I think every day.
Well, probably every day, yeah. I knew it would be a bit
I know when I was at Sky very early on, I was 20 and I really wanted to be an exec. And I'd only been there 5 seconds as an assistant, but I'd been offered a job at Merlin, I think, at the time, but to run the P&G account. And everyone said, well, don't go and do that because you'll just be spot matching, which I would have been if I'd gone there at the time. And I wanted to be promoted, but there wasn't really a role. So I remember writing an entire presentation called The Sorcerer's Apprentice and making Mark Chippendale sit through it, even though there wasn't a job to do. But I wanted to say to him, even if you haven't got the job now, I want to know that you're going to think of me for it when the next one comes up. Yeah. So, I look back now and think, God, was it a bit pushy? I think I did it quite charmingly, but I wasn't going to wait to be asked. Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm right here when you're ready for me. I'm here.
And that's isn't that part of being a salesperson? But like, you've got to put yourself out there, put yourself forward. Yeah. It actually reminds me a little bit when Karen Stacey moved from radio to TV at Channel 4. She knew nothing about TV at all. So she decided that she would think about all the questions she would ask, or even all the barriers, and then she created a presentation. Yeah. And they said she's the only one that actually did a presentation. And then at the end, they said, "Oh, any questions?" She said, "Yeah. So, how have I done?" And it's like she was the only one to actually then ask for feedback. Like, don't go out of the room until you've almost closed the deal.
My dad taught me that. He always said to me, always ask at the end, is there anything I've left you unclear about? Yeah. Is there anything that you're concerned about that you'd like to air with me so I've got the chance to answer to it?
Exactly.
Again, shows bravery, but it actually gives you a fighting chance to answer it if something has been misunderstood. Yeah. And I can tell you as a therapist, there's nothing more painful than being misunderstood or misjudged. It's so painful. So having the chance to actually answer that full on, why wouldn't you ask?
Actually, my question actually was going to be about kind of, as a therapist and also obviously working with extraordinary leaders across your career, there must have been time, because I now want to reverse it in terms of then now you being the mentor, because you'll have mentored so many people. Has there been times where like leaders have been stuck, or you've just needed to help them see a blind spot and then it's really transformed them? So I'm just thinking about, if you think back to when you've mentored people, because again, you've got that unique piece where you can understand the leadership side, but you really understand as a therapist as well that there's sometimes the blockages, and if you can get rid of that blockage, you can kind of
often it's something transform. That they know is there, but they're fearful to say, because once they've said it, it's out in the world. And it may be, I want to leave my wife. Actually, I'm talking to you about my issues being a CEO of XYZ, but actually the real problem is I want to leave my wife and I don't know how to do it. Or I've got a gambling addiction and no one knows, and that's why I've got to earn all this commission and stay at this particular media owner because I'm paying off a massive debt. when someone can actually bring, and I think there is a chance in mentoring, if you're not writing anything down, that someone might trust and believe that you are enough of a vault that you won't say anything.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know me and I'll tell lots of funny stories about things, but I know when it's a vault situation, I would never dream of sharing it. And I think when you feel safe enough with that, someone, and again, as a therapist, obviously I'm trained to help people bring these things up, but often there's something else going on. And sometimes it is that actually life at that company has run its course. And you don't quite want to believe that that might be true. So to me, rather than being a sitting duck, you might as well get ahead of it by thinking, I think it's time that some people that are in difficult situations at work, I say to them, even if you decide you're going to leave, you might not leave for a year, but it will become more bearable that you know you're going to.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things you can do if someone can say the thing that feels unthinkable to say.
It's interesting, both on being on the receiving end of it and maybe a little bit now, when you were doing Lighthouse, you must have, there's definitely an element of therapy, amateur therapy, in talking to a headhunter, because it's the first chance they get to, as you say, if they feel they can open up about what's really happening at work and how that's making them feel, and I think that's we have it all the time now. It's just that. Talking to someone who's objective about
of course
everything.
But I think also in headhunting, it's the first time somebody might talk about money publicly. Most of us, certainly as Brits, don't talk about money. It's uncouth. Often I used to ask questions. If I felt there was something going on in a relationship, I would say to someone, would you ever consider working abroad? It's a great way of opening up. And I used to say, the second question was, who and what would you need to think about if you were going to do that? And at that point, if there was a slightly difficult relationship or there was something going on with a child or whatever, it would then get aired, which is, well, actually my 9-year-old is suffering with autism and we wouldn't need to be able to move school, or actually my husband or wife or partner wouldn't want to come with me, so that would be a concern, but I might still do it. And you're like, okay, so there's something here. So there would be ways of gently opening it without forcing someone to disclose something they didn't want to. When we used to always start at Lighthouse, and I loved it, with where was home? What did mum and dad do? What did you want to be when you were a kid? And I used to sometimes follow up with, what did you do with your Saturday job money? Because that would give me a bit of a feel for money. And I'd ask them, when you passed your driving test, what did it feel like? Like, it would give me some clues as to your way of operating. What was your operating system as a human? What mattered to you? People reveal themselves in those answers. But often, because we're often doing C-suite, as you are, people are very polished at the interview stuff. And I was like, I couldn't care less about that. I want to get round the back of you. I want to see what's going on, really. Because that's the only way that we could have ensured that the cultural fit and the body wouldn't reject the organ in the job we were putting them into. I needed to know that stuff.
We talk about the perfect match. It's got to be perfect for them and perfect for the company. And if you try and fudge that, it's never going to work, is it? For anyone.
It will fall over in the end.
Yeah, I agree.
It's interesting you're talking about we talk about a lot about vulnerability nowadays, in leadership in particular. Where do you think that fits? There are a lot of leaders out there, let's be honest, who have to portray themselves as, I've got no doubts, I know what I'm doing, I'm running the show. How important is it in modern leadership, do you think, now, to show that vulnerability? Because I feel like there is a balance.
I agree.
Well, there's authenticity and then there's vulnerability, isn't there?
I completely agree. And I think, unfortunately, some leaders have decided to be performatively vulnerable.
Yes.
And some of my mates describe me as a walking lie detector test, because I'm a therapist and a headhunter. I'm going to notice it, right? So, and it's difficult when you're dating because you can spot it a mile off. But so the minute I get a sense of performative vulnerability, I'm out. And I think that some people that, aren't authentic in what they're doing with that, you're going to get found out, or people feel it. They can feel it and they'll move away from it. I do think it's important, Marco, to be able to be honest about certain pieces, but you're still running a company and you are therefore, for me, I see it as you are corporate parents. If your parents kept telling you they were having collapses, breakdowns, worries, anxieties, it does come from the top. Everybody then starts having anxieties and worries. So you do have to hold and contain a lot of stuff. privately
Part of
with
the
your own
job.
coach or mentors. That's
Yeah.
part of being
Yeah.
a leader.
Yeah.
I think there's an appropriateness to showing some levels of personal vulnerability or even some corporate vulnerability. But to me, you are corporate parents. What would a parent do with their children? They wouldn't tell them they were struggling to meet the
Yeah.
mortgage
Yeah.
or that, mum's had an affair. You'd find a way to hold the kids together while you were figuring it out.
Yeah.
So I think there's something about appropriate levels of it, and I think there's something about watching out for performative vulnerability.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I've not heard corporate parents before, but it's
It makes
absolutely
a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, because you protect your kids from. Yes, you're very close as a family, and but you do protect them from certain pieces, and it's the same as you say in the corporate world. It's not going to help them knowing everything. You're as honest and open as you can with information you can share.
Yeah.
Again, something that Karen Stacey said. She said, "Look, we're the weather. People want to see bright and sunny." And yes, okay, occasionally, it could become cloudy and rainy, and when it gets that, then we can approach that. But they want you to be the weather. They want to know that somebody at the top's got it. They don't need to hear all of the shit that reflects from day to day. No, that's really interesting. Can I just move on to advice? I mean, we call mentors. We've dug into mentors, and people listen, and they've said that they love all the pieces of advice. We call it a magpie moment, or something that you've stolen with pride. Is this something that you've seen, or a piece of advice, or something that somebody's done and you thought, that's really smart, I'm going to steal with pride and take that on?
The steal with pride sentence that came at me just before Lighthouse and stayed with me forever, and again, it's Mr. Nick Causwell. He said, is there a market in the gap? But is there a gap in the market back and forth? So lots of people see a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? Is there money to be made there? Is there a commercial model in there? Yeah. And what surprises me is the number of people, even now, I mean, I work with a lot of founders now in Psyched, but people that want to set up a company and say, I've had this amazing idea, I'm going to do this and it's going to be amazing. And I'm sitting thinking, I'm sure I met someone a week and a half ago who's doing exactly that. And I'll say to them, have you done your market research and have you heard of this company? Oh no, I haven't even. I'm like, wow, you're about to put all of your life savings into this big idea. Someone's 3, 4, 5, 6 months ahead of you over here and fully funded in doing it. So I'm always aware of that point, which is there's many times where you can see a gap, but is there a market in that gap? That's what's really important. So that's something I've always noticed. And I think, I mean, you mentioned Scilla already. Scilla Snowball, James Scilla Snowball, amazing. I think she always acts with great elegance. I use the word elegance a lot and I get teased about it, but I think doing things with elegance is important. When I got my first chair role, I thought, great, brilliant. I'm off to the races as a chairperson. This is going to be wonderful. I was dreadful. The first 6 board meetings, I was absolutely dreadful because I'm a doer. So all the things on the agenda, I'm like, well, I can help with that and I can do this. And suddenly I'm like, oh my God. So I remember ringing Scilla and said, can I have a cup of tea with you? How on earth do I become a chairwoman? I actually realised I don't know how to do it. And so again, she really helped me understand the difference between guiding and holding together a board rather than driving a board and operationally running the board in that way. She showed me the difference. So again, I think there's different things that she taught me, the difference between being an operating executive and a non-executive. I didn't really understand that, shockingly, until I actually got into it.
And how did you stop yourself from doing things then?
I literally had to stop myself from having
take
a
the pen
to-do
off.
list.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, another thing about being in that role is you've got to learn through your own mistakes. Yes, you can do everything for everybody, but they've got to come through. But I can imagine that would be really.
I would come out of the to-do list as long as your arm. I literally had to sit on my hands or hold that silence, which obviously you learn to do as a therapist, but to hold the silence, which is someone else is going to have to put their hand up for this because I can't do it for you.
Oh, that's great.
There's so many versions of chairing that it's sort of underestimated as a skill, isn't it?
I really think it is.
I think a lot of people think, you just sort of go in there and
I sit on the board of NSPCC now, and I've obviously had Neil Burkett as our chair. We've got Emma Scott coming in as the new chair. We've got I've had Tom Tomazi with the Childline, again, fantastic chair. So it's nice to observe other people in that role. And again, magpie point, I take bits from each of them as I go. But again, if you've never had the chance to be in a formal board meeting, then you wouldn't have understood the difference that the CEO to the chair will make and how the deference works in that. So again, if you're not yet on the board of the company, or for some reason you can't, or different businesses, different size of boards, get on a charity board. Go and be on the board of someone else's business for free. You'll get something out from it by watching other people's styles.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Everything has sounded way too perfect so far. So we always like to delve into people's biggest fuck up. Now, it's we know there's probably been a few. We've all had a few.
Of course.
But yeah, what stands out for you? What
I think I've got more in my personal life than in my professional life, but I thought about my professional life, and the one that came up, and funnily enough, we've just mentioned Tom Tomasi. So I was at MSM, part of Global, and I had the most wonderful time. I worked with Bruce Daisley and Andrew Morley, and some of the best, we had the best fun at that company. It was wonderful. We then, we sold EMAP stations. EMAP decided to set up EMAP on Air, where I met and worked with Karen Stacey. And so I used to look after those stations for MSM. So I was asked to come over and lead EMAP on Air. Tom Tomasi got hired to lead it. Fantastic. I was an exec on the brink of group headness, and I'd had my first child. So I'd come out for not long. I was only out for, I don't know, maybe 4 months with Ned, my son, who's now 28, can you believe?
Wow.
And EMAP said, okay, we're going to hire these group heads. They hired Sarah and Karen from Channel 4, and they had one other. And I was determined that it could and should be me. And to be fair, I think it probably should have been me. I think I was the right stage. And Fuller Girling, wonderful Fuller Girling, were doing the search, and I was asked to participate. And I wanted it so much that I stretched so far out of frame and common sense, and ended up doing this interview, which even when I think about it now, I literally cringe. I did something about Star Wars, I can't even remember, but it was so awful. And when you're in the room and even halfway through, you're like, I've literally lost any semblance of audience here, and they're probably thinking, thank God we're not going to give it to her. Now, someone else got that job, and they actually didn't last in that job. But unfortunately, on top of not getting the job and seriously embarrassing myself professionally, letting myself down, I then got offered by Tom the operations director job. I mean, do I look like an operations person? And I was made to do that job for a year. I just had a son. I was a sole breadwinner. I had to stay in the job. I hated every second of that job. I did learn how to use databases, and I met the wonderful Sinead Greenaway and Gary Hollins, and we made the best of it. But it was a real career low for me. And Tom and I have really talked about it, because it was a real back step for me. And I had to recover from that. It took a year or two to recover back into my career from it. But it stemmed from me wanting something really badly. And actually, with my more mature head on, knowing and sensing there was some hesitation about giving me the job up front, I should have gone to Tom and Fuller Girling and said, what is it that you're worried about? Let me see if I can address it directly in the interview. But instead, I took myself off to some mad world and did jazz hands.
Jazz hands and creativity.
I mean, worse than jazz hands, Rachel. But so it cost me the job, and it put me in a job that I hated, and it set my career back, I think, maybe even 2 years.
Wow.
And so that was a massive fuck up.
Did you at the time was there a clear, that lesson for you was obvious, was it, to go?
I knew. And actually I knew it in my body, in the work I do now, I talk a lot about the somatic feeling. We've got to trust our gut judgment on things. We've got to identify the difference between anxiety and fear, which is fine, push through it, versus something's not quite right. I knew going into that something wasn't quite right, and now I would address it. But then I just was sort of hell-bent. I would just push forward and hope for the best.
And do you think that's like trusting your gut a bit more as you get older?
Absolutely trusting your gut. You'll know when something's not quite right. Even when I used to go for interviews for roles, even in reception, even, while you're waiting to be taken in, can I see myself coming here every day? Can I imagine? Or they'll say something in the meeting and you're thinking, I don't know if I agree with that. Even when we would take briefs, I'm sure you both have this now, taking briefs for roles when I was a headhunter. Even now, when someone brings me in and asks me to, I do quite a lot of Wendy from Billions in my new role, and I get asked there could be someone that needs some psychotherapeutic coaching, and I'll sit and meet with them, but I'll sit and think, does this feel right? Do I think that I can do something with this person or this thing? Or does something not feel right? I promise you, 99% of the time, you know already.
Your gut's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think so.
I had a period of time when I was at Spotify, and we were hiring a lot, but at the same time we were being challenged a lot on, rightly so, thinking of people outside of your own type and more diversity, and so on. And it's interesting because up until then I'd relied so heavily on my gut when I was interviewing people, and things that I couldn't necessarily explain to a internal talent team, a headhunter. And I sort of lost my confidence a little bit there, because I was like, if you trust your gut, isn't that just trusting you and wanting something else that is going to make you feel good because it's going to be like you?
Yes.
And I think that's quite an interesting,
But I think you think about capability and then you think about cultural fit. So they're both important, aren't they? And sometimes with that, our gut will help us with the cultural fit. Is this actually going to work out? But if you are having to and should be hiring diverse teams with diverse skill sets, sometimes, of course, you're going to come slightly out of your comfort zone for that. What I used to do with that would go and find people that do those other roles now and say, what are the questions I need to ask and what are the things I need to know about that role? So I always used to say as a headhunter, I could hire for any role. BP could hire me to find a mining engineer, of which I know absolutely nothing about. But I would have then gone to Shell and all the other companies and found that person and said, what do I need to know about what you do in order to hire for this role? So again, there's something about being aware enough to think, I'm not sure about this capability, so I've got to go and educate myself really fast. And I'm going to have no shame in going and asking the people and saying, I don't know anything about this. You need to help me.
Yeah. So I think it's not being afraid, but I also think I think there's a personal gut feel, but I think in interview processes, it's very much more data driven. And sometimes you've got to make sure that you're following, it's your head and your heart, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's more in a personal thing if you think, it might even be on a date, not me, I'm married. But anyway, this is not right. But anyway, we're really gone out of tangent. And I am concerned that we're running out of time. I want to make sure that we do get onto your 2 books, because obviously you brought psychotherapy into the world of business, and you've got the 2 books coming out. I think there's a third as well in the making around narcissism. Is it your quest to find, within the corporate world, did it bring you into, what was the inspiration for I suppose, for the books? Yeah.
So if you told me 2.5 years ago that I'd have written any books, never mind books about narcissism, I'd have thought everyone was smoking crack. Do you know what I mean? It was never an ambition. It's not something I was particularly interested in. I was trained in personality disorders when I was training as a therapist many years ago. And, cluster B, which is where this personality type sits, is in there. But it was probably an hour's lecture. It wasn't particularly interesting. I loved somebody who ended up coming out as a narcissist, and I suffered terribly with this individual. And when I was recovering, I tried to find either therapists, institutions, groups, books about it, so I could really educate myself. if I don't know it, I'll educate myself.
Exactly.
So I went searching for all of these things, and I couldn't find it. I found amazing therapists, and I obviously know lots in my cohort, but none of them really got narcissism, because clearly narcissists don't go to therapy because they think there's nothing wrong with them. At the time, there was no real books about it. Dr. Ramani and some others have now written some books, but they came out long after it had happened to me. There was no residential care for psychological abuse, which is what it is. And so I couldn't find anything. So that I thought, well, then sod it. I'll have to make it myself.
There's a gap in the market.
Yeah. So I actually wrote Endless first, which is a personal experience of narcissism in romantic relationships. And I started writing columns for Stylist, and thanks to the lovely Ella Dolphin and Lisa. And they asked me to write a column on narcissistic parents, which I don't have. My parents were quite something, but they weren't narcissists. And I wrote the column, and I just got flooded with people contacting me saying, my mum, my dad, my partner's mum or dad. So I thought I better really get studying further. So I went to America and studied. I went to North Macedonia and studied under Dr. or Professor Sam Vaknin. I've gone to town on really understand. I've studied all the scientific papers. I've started a PhD in it. Like I've gone for it because I'm like, the problem with narcissism is at the moment everybody's ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, auntie, mother-in-law is a narcissist, and of course they're not. They're just annoying. But when you're in the presence of, or you're really dealing with one, whether it's at work, at home, in your family, it's awful. And my view on it is that we understand domestic abuse now. We understand sexual abuse now. We don't really fully understand psychological abuse yet. And I think it's the final frontier, including coercive control and some other things you'll hear about in the press. So I think narcissism sits in there. So I thought, right, I'm gonna really study it. So My Parent the Peacock, which is the first book that's actually coming out with Hachette, 25th of September. So I took about 6 months to write it. I interviewed a lot of people that have had experience of it. So there's lots of anonymous vignettes in there, etc. But I wanted to make it a third factual about what the hell is it and what isn't it. So lots and lots of science and studies. The middle third is around what does it really look like in action, the bad, the good and the ugly and everything else. And the final third is, okay, well, what can we do about it? How do you recover? How do you deal with it? Whether they're alive, whether they're dead, whether they're whatever's going on. How do you genuinely recover? Because you can, which is brilliant. So that's what I've done with the first book. The second book is the story of recovery as well. And the third book, which is going to be called Sly and Mighty, How Leadership Lost Its Way, is all about what happens when we're in quite an uncertain world, which we are at the minute. We tend to oscillate towards very charismatic leaders, some of which are brilliant, but some of which are narcissistically driven.
Oh, I think we know a few.
What were you thinking of?
There's a few leading heads of first state.
Yeah, so Sly and Mighty, I suspect will come out back end of next year. But
Wow.
And that'll be it.
And
I'll be
done. We won't, and we know there's going to be some other exciting stuff as well. So that's been amazing. We are going to end with one final question. And we're going to take you back to maybe, when you were starting out or even as a younger child. Just what would your advice now be to your younger self, knowing everything you know, everything you've done? When you look back, what would you advise yourself? Is there anything you do differently? Like, how do you look at this podcast? Often becomes quite reflective in that sense.
Yeah, of course. So my belief is, I think we are only here once. I love the notion of reincarnation. Maybe it's true, but I think we're only here once. There is a famous saying that says, life is like a great big canvas. Throw as much paint on it as you can. I believe that. But the lesson I would have, I think I knew then, and I've certainly lived it, and I'd advise it is, how much do you want it? Whatever it is you want, how much do you want it? Because if you really want it, the chances are you'll get it. But some people say they want all these things, but they're not really putting their back into it, or they're not using all of their entrepreneurial thinking or connection or backbone. Like, if you really want it, you'll be able to have it. That's what I would say to my younger self now, and anyone that's ambitious in whatever form, whether it's in relationships, whether it's work, it's being a parent, whatever it is. If you want it hard enough, bad enough, you can get it.
But you've got to put the
You've got to put the
effort in. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah. And I'm just sat here thinking, what do you think she'd say to you? Because I'm just thinking, well, she must be incredibly proud of you. What would she say to you now?
I think she'd say, is it going to be as hard as I think it is?
You'd probably say,
and the
harder.
answer is yes, but you'll do it. You'll do it.
Yeah,
you've got everything you need inside of you. Other people will help you, and that will be amazing. But you've got everything you need right in here.
Yeah, have faith in yourself. And wow.
Oh, lovely ending.
Oh, that is a lovely ending. Oh, Kathleen, that was just,
Kathleen.
I really enjoyed that conversation. It was just, it was wonderful, and we really appreciate your time. All the best with the books. We can't wait to see those come out. We are coming to the launch. We'll be there cheerleading you in the background, and all the very best. We know that there's always something to come from Kathleen, so it's like this is, it's going to be an incredible next 12 months for you, I'm sure, and we wish you all very.
Thank you. I'm slightly scared, but I'm ready for it.
You are, of course.
Yes.
We are ready. That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If you need a little more wisdom in your business, then be sure to come to the TheZoo.London for executive search and consulting support.
And don't forget, we love to hear about your mentors and your advice. So do find us on all socials. They're listed in the podcast description. As Mentor is a viral Tribe entertainment production. And please do give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And please join us next time for more pearls of wisdom from Mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you.